Well, alrighty, gang, welcome back to the Gutowski Files, starring our very own Stephen Gutowski. He is the founder, editor-in-chief, lead writer. We did this last week, never mind. He is the founder and CEO and head honcho over at thereload.com. And if I haven't mentioned it recently, it's on me.
LuckyGunner.com is my go-to resource for in-stock, fast shipping ammunition. Whether you're looking for rifle ammo, handgun ammo, rimfire ammo, or shotgun ammo, go to LuckyGunner.com for the best place on the internet to find it all in stock and ready to ship. They have stood by us all in this ammo pandemic, giving us great education via their YouTube channel and their ballistic testing as well. Go and check them out and find great ammo ready to ship at good prices.
TheReload.com is in a very unique space, kind of like active self-protection. They're over there doing the Lord's work, bringing us as politics-free as possible, as bias-free as humanly possible, sane, sober reporting on the Second Amendment and all things gun-related. So go over there to TheReload.com and give them a look and consider getting a membership. Stephen, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Just finished recording our podcast for the Weekly Reload podcast, and the main interview. I think it's going to be a pretty good one.
Very good. So where can the folks find that, and who's on this week?
Yeah, this is you can find it anywhere basically, just like this show. Any podcasts app you've got, or YouTube as well. We make clips and put them on YouTube too. And this week we have the head of the Self-Defense Brigade, which is a group that is having armed marches in Hartford, Connecticut, to try and push back against some of the violence they've seen up there. So it's a very, very interesting community-based group of gun rights activists, I guess you could call them. I don't know what you would call them, but they're community violence prevention activists, but not in the sense that you might normally hear that terms. So pretty unique movement, and really interesting guy that's leading it. I think it'll be a really good episode.
Very good. Well, I'll have to give that a listen. That sounds very interesting. There's always concerns. Are they? Let me just ask you this: are they actually out sort of patrolling to prevent crime, or are they just having these sort of marches to let the community know, hey, we're out here? Or?
I think it's a combination of both of those things. It's a group of minorities who live in the area, right? Primarily Black Hartford residents who are doing this as sort of a self-policing effort. They're not like making arrests or anything like that. They're just kind of show of force. Like there was a murder there recently that sparked the latest round of protest or marching, not really protesting, but marching. And it's obviously been controversial among some of this is Connecticut we're talking about, obviously. So some of the gun control advocates there and the mayor have been critical of this movement. And so, I wanted to have him on and have on the head of it, and get his side, give people a really better, really clear and in-depth understanding of what he's thinking, what they're trying to accomplish. And I think it was a really good interview. So people will be able to get that sort of insight from it. Once it comes out it'll be out publicly next Monday. Of course, Reload members get it a day early. We also have a Reload member segment this week. That's another thing that we do over on the Weekly Reload podcast, which Reload members will be on, and we get sort of a better feeling of the community there. So I think it'll be a good episode.
Very cool. And you don't have to almost die to be on Steven's show. So that's definitely an incentive. You can just go over there and just talk to him. He's a very reasonable guy. So yeah, let's talk after. Maybe I can talk to your guest one of these days over here on this show. That could be fascinating to talk to him. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Although hopefully he won't have to get into a situation that would normally precipitate coming on the show. But I think that that'd be a good idea.
Maybe we'll do a bonus or something. Well, we'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah.
So this week we are talking about an article over at The Reload. This one by contributing writer Jake Fogelman. It is dated March 11th of 2024. The headline is Federal Judge Strikes Down California Gun Sale Rationing Restriction. And my understanding of this was it one gun a month that California said you could buy, and for some reason think this is the golden key to end all mass shootings or something stupid. I'm sorry. I'm editorializing. Go ahead, Stephen.
Well, I think the intention from those who advocated for the bill California's not the only one that has a bill like this. In fact, Virginia, where I live, has a one gun a month policy. Mm-hmm. California is, as you might guess, is sort of the strictest in the country, where it's for any guns, and there's really no exceptions to it unless you're law enforcement, which gets accepted from like all of the gun restrictions in California, of course. But they had a much stricter version of this, but there are several states that have a sort of restriction on how many guns you can buy in a month or in a certain period of time. And so this one applies to all guns, whereas in Virginia, like we have one gun a month policy, but it only applies to people who don't have concealed carry permits, for instance. But the goal of it is meant to be sort of anti-trafficking is how you usually see these justified. The idea being that like a trafficker will come in and buy a bunch of guns at once in order to take them out of state and sell them to criminals or something, or they'll use a network of people doing straw purchases to accomplish this or what have you. And so that's how they're usually justified. But yeah, this one was found to be unconstitutional by a federal judge out there in California, a district court judge. So sort of the first level of a federal case against it.
So was this a lawsuit brought by someone, or was this a criminal case that reached the court?
This was a gun rights lawsuit.
Okay.
And so this is another one where you've seen some success at the lower levels of the court system in California against some of these toughest in the nation restrictions. But this is, I think, the first time I can recall seeing. There might be one, maybe I'm missing one, but it's the first time I recall seeing this particular policy be struck down. And it was struck down, as you might expect, under the Bruin standard. We've talked a lot about that on the show.
Sure.
Throughout the history of this show, because it's been very consequential, especially in lower court rulings, where essentially it's based on the idea that for a gun restriction to be constitutional, to comport with the Second Amendment, it has to have at least a close analogous relation to an actual historical tradition of regulating guns in the same way that dates back to the founding era.
Right.
And so essentially the judge found that just wasn't the case for this sort of restriction on how many guns a lawful person could buy.
So back in the founding, Jebediah O'Rourke could have hoarded as many muskets as he wanted, is the idea.
Yeah, there weren't any sort of limits on how many guns you could buy in the founding era. There's no evidence of laws like that at the time.
Yeah, and let's address this really quick. The elephant in the room, the common refrain from anti-gun folks tends to be, well, yeah, but at the founding, all there were muskets and cannons, and they didn't have this advanced technology. And my retort to that is always, that's true. Guns are far more lethal than they were then. Obviously, you have everything from rifling to optics to magnifiers to magazines, none of which they had back then. But what about the First Amendment? They didn't have the internet, right, at the founding. So does that mean we can't, they can restrict internet's, speech because it wasn't around? And that's usually the retort that I hear and it just doesn't hold water with me. Technology will advance. That doesn't change the fact that the point of the Second Amendment is actually not to defend your home or carry a pistol, to prevent crime. That wasn't anywhere in the text. The idea of the Second Amendment is, in the event the government gets out of control and tyrannical, the people have something like equivalent, weaponry to fight a tyrannical government. Am I mistaken? Is that accurate?
What I will say on that front is the Supreme Court has directly addressed the first half of that you talked about, this idea of like,
militia?
No, the idea that modern guns wouldn't be covered by the Second Amendment, and they called it borderline frivolous. That was what they wrote in Satano, which is a 2016 case that dealt with a Massachusetts ban on stun guns, because obviously stun guns were not around during the founding era. And that was one of the main reasons that Massachusetts State Supreme Court had upheld its ban on those types of arms. It upheld a conviction of a woman over this. And the court accepted that case and unanimously ruled against the Massachusetts Supreme Court. And one of the things they said is that, this is not a viable argument. The idea that the only weapons that existed during the founding were muskets and such. Interesting.
So who are the two parties in this case? Who brought the suit? And I assume it's the California Attorney General's office or Solicitor General that's arguing for the state. And then what's the next step in this? Will the state appeal this, do you think? And where does it go from there?